Welcome back. Tonight we are discussing the plans to redevelop the 42 acres along Sarasota Bay. The group Bayfront 2020 was formed in 2013, a group of community leaders hoping to create a roadmap for how land from the quay to the Van Wezel could be transformed as we approach 2020. The project is gaining momentum. The newly formed Sarasota Bayfront Planning Organization is responsible for creating a master plan and hiring a project manager. They hope to break ground by next December. And joining us with more is Bayfront 2020 is Michael KLAUBER, who serves as volunteer chairman, and John THAXTON, vice president of community investment for the Gulf Coast Community Foundation. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And Michael, we'll start with you and ask, because people are watching this now and they want to know what to expect.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And it's been a very, very exciting period since 2013 when we started this journey. You know, we've now got 55 organizations, community organizations, neighborhoods, foundations, civic organizations, and arts organizations that have all gotten together to create this document that is our basis for what's going to happen, called our Vision and Guiding Principles for the Development of Sarasota Bayfront.
So what are we talking about here? Are we talking about public spaces with other arts, entertainment, restaurants, all the above?
Well, you know, we've spent this 3+ years really getting all of the data and all the information together. One of the things that we were able to get from the city was basically a due diligence of all the things that are on the 42-acre property that's owned by the city, which is the home of the Van Wezel, the orchestra, the lawn bowlers, the garden club. I mean, there's so many people on that property. It's extensive, it's broad, and we don't have any specific plans yet, because the idea is you're going to take this set of guiding principles and this vision, you're going to take all the data that we've collected, all the information from all the different organizations that are either on the property now or have a dream of being there, and try to sort all of that information out so that it gives us basically this vision, which it says we want to create a long-term master plan for the Sarasota Bayfront area that will establish a cultural and economic legacy for the region while ensuring open public access to the Bayfront.
John, you study these things in terms of the future success of our community and getting the most out of these acres. What needs to go in there?
Well, I think the community has been very clear as to what they want to see as the ultimate result of the planning process, not specifically, but in general terms. And in general terms, they acknowledge that this is an ideal site for arts and cultural organizations to have their performance venues, such as we have now at the Sarasota Orchestra, Van Wezel, and others. But the message that we received resoundingly in the thousands of individuals that participated in the planning process is they did not want to see privatization of this property. They wanted to see it remain in the public domain, and they wanted to see the asphalt parking lot activated in a green space, an open space where families and people can come to recreate.
What exactly does that mean? Are we talking about there won't be restaurants and shops for people to visit?
Absolutely not. No. In order to have, just as we see now with Van Wezel, we have an associate restaurateur who provides for meals and catering and things like that. Possibly there's liable to be small boutique shops that would cater to that. But what you're not going to see is the over-commercialization of the site with the green space and the open space loss and just have a sea of asphalt.
Can either of you give me some examples from other communities out there of what you're talking about, or areas along the waterfront in other communities?
We've visited communities all over the country to learn best practices, not necessarily to see the best facilities, but to figure out how communities work together to be successful. I think one of the most successful projects that we saw was the Brooklyn Bridge Park in New York, which was really a blighted area, which used a similar process of community involvement to our guiding principles and vision to create a beautiful waterfront setting.
What is there?
What's there? It's a beautiful park. It's starting to develop some other amenities on it as well. People want to be close to it. They want to be connected to it. It's a brilliant project. And so that was probably one of the best waterfront examples I think that we've seen, unless you can think of others, John.
Well, I tend to shy away from that sort of question, not from being evasive, but one of the things that I've learned about Sarasota is we don't want to do it like you did it over there.
Yeah.
You know, Sarasota is a very special place, and we want to have a very special bayfront,
Right.
and that's what we intend on creating.
And why don't we pick up on that in just a minute? Our discussion of Bayfront 2020 is just getting started, but when we return, we'll have a full look at your weather forecast. Welcome back. If you are just joining us, we are discussing Bayfront 2020. Our guests tonight are Michael KLAUBER, who serves as volunteer chairman for Bayfront 2020, and John THAXTON, the vice chair of the community investment for the Gulf Coast Community Foundation. So people are wondering tonight, they're watching this, they know that downtown Sarasota is such a beautiful area, but there's been something lacking, and they kind of want to get an idea of what that will be. And aside from the grand vision, what can you tell them to kind of look at?
Well, the whole process of this started with realizing that there was so much property in play, the 42 acres, the Quay property, some of the properties across the street, the park to the north, and there really wasn't anyone looking at the big picture. There was really 75 acres in play all at the same time. And the question for me and others was, what are they going to say 50 years from now about the decisions that we're making for our community now?
John, I would imagine there are communities who do this right and communities who don't do it right. What do you have to take into consideration?
Well, the communities oftentimes that do it right are faced with some sort of a crisis. There's something that's presented to the community that says we have to do something immediately, we have to do it right now. Sarasota is not necessarily faced with that kind of a crisis, so our initiative is one of more of a proactive motivation. So we're suggesting that in spite of not having a crisis moment to react to, we have an opportunity to react to, as Michael just described. And so we want to take what the communities did in response to a crisis, only we want to do it proactively. We want to do it voluntarily to make sure that this missing element of this beautiful Sarasota downtown has an intimate connection to the Bayfront. That's kind of what's driving us.
Is there a basically a complicated correlation that you have to make here in terms of our city government, our county government, how it works, and how these plans can be made?
Wow, John, I'm going to let you answer that.
So ultimately,
you're the former politician.
Yeah, and there's not a great deal of opposition in the Sarasota Bayfront planning process with the city and county. This is one of those examples where they're in more unison than in opposition.
Right, but we do not have a strong mayor form of government, and in many communities, it's the mayor who spearheads a development project.
Well, no, that's not necessarily true. It is true in some respects, but in many of the models that we saw, it was the private sector that spearheaded these activities, and that's why we chose in this particular initiative to do it completely outside of the government purview.
Right.
We have not asked for permission for what we're doing. We have not sought approval. The Sarasota Bayfront Planning Organization is not appointed by the City Commission. This is completely an organic process that is led by the citizenry.
Right, but my point is there, all you have to do is look up the road in Tampa where you have Jeff Vinnick, the owner of the Lightning, a billionaire, getting Microsoft founder Bill Gates involved, and they are transforming the downtown of Tampa. But again, that is a distinct leader pushing his vision, and what we're talking about here in Sarasota is something a little bit different.
We have the Sarasota Bayfront Planning Organization does not lack in leadership. They're some of the strongest national and international business leaders that one can imagine that happen to be in Sarasota, and they have now the destiny of this Bayfront parcel in their sights, and I would put them up against a Vinnick or other scenarios like that any day. I think we're on the right course. We have the right leadership. We have the right timing. And the outcome, I think, will be equal to the examples that you're giving.
Michael, you know what a lot of people who are watching this right now are saying. How are you going to pay for it?
Well, so far, as John alluded to, we haven't asked any of the, we haven't asked the county or the city for any money. So this has all been privately funded. So it will be a combination of different funding models, but part of the master planning process is going to be bringing a master plan back to the city and the county that's viable for the future.
What kind of funding models?
Boy, there's so many different ways that different communities do it, and every single community we've been to has done it in a different way. But the centerpiece of it is going to come from the private sector.
I want to ask both of you gentlemen, are you confident that, you laid it out specifically, 2020. I have been in many communities that have a waterfront, and every couple of years a new plan comes out, and for some reason, years later, it never happens. Or can you assure people who live in this community that this is happening?
This is the third or fourth, or maybe fifth, go around for this particular initiative, depending on where you count. We've been to communities where it's taken them 25 or 30 years to do it. So clearly there's a lot of examples of where it has taken an extraordinarily long time, generational, to get it done. But we think that we have the personnel in place, and we have the motivation behind the community. One of the things that we find in many of the communities where it took so long to actually happen was they got great plans but didn't have community support. Yeah. So one of the messages that was very clear to us is build the community support first. We have 55 of the most prominent organizations in the city and the county supporting the guiding principles and the vision. That will provide the platform for the philanthropy and for the government agencies to launch a successful plan from.
I would imagine there are a lot of calculations that have to go into this. You want it to be a public space and keep the beauty of that area, but you also, I would imagine, would like area businesses to be able to grow and prosper from what goes in there.
Absolutely. I mean, we're an arts and cultural icon in Florida. John Ringling set us up for that 100 years ago. 50 years ago, when they built the Van Wezel, it was one of only 3 performing arts halls in all of the state of Florida. So we've been leaders in performing arts, cultural arts for decades and decades. And we know that that's a centerpiece of our community. It needs to be preserved.
And that's the next question. The Van Wezel is such a jewel. And we are so lucky around here to get the performing arts and the people who come and perform there. People are going to want to make sure that that will not be adversely affected whatsoever.
The Van Wezel Foundation has been doing its studies, the Orchestra Foundation doing its studies, so it's hoped that in parallel with the planning organization doing the master plan, that those organizations will be doing their studies and finalizing their needs for whatever facilities they feel like they need. We've been making them think about the next 25 to 50 years. And that's hard for a lot of folks to do, to say, what do we think we're going to need 50 years from now? But those are the questions we need to be asking.
What has to happen in the next couple of months for this project to remain on schedule and to meet the goal of this going up by 2020?
The Sarasota Bayfront Planning Organization needs to hire a project manager and a subsequent design engineer firm that will take all of the information and all of the questions that you've asked tonight and all of the questions that we have received from the City Commission and from the community and assimilate them into a master plan that meets the standards of this community. The first thing are the hiring of the project manager and the firm.
Michael, we have less than a minute, but I want to ask you this. When people come up to you and ask you about this, what is the most often asked question?
When are we going to see something? What is it going to be? How are you going to connect the Bayfront to the downtown area? Those are the big questions. And the greatest thing that we've been able to do, my great lesson has been to be a good listener. And we've listened to the community now for 3+ years, as John said, with 55 organizations all in agreement that this document stands well for our future. I feel very confident that if we stick to our guns, everybody may not get everything they want, but if we all work together, we'll all win.
I appreciate it. This is very exciting stuff. We have to take a quick break, but when we return, we'll have final thoughts with our guests, plus comments from our viewers on the plan to build a new overpass for I-75. Welcome back. We are redeveloping Sarasota's Bayfront and to establish a cultural and economic legacy for the region. And our guests tonight join us for final thoughts. And during the break, we were talking about the Lens project in St. Pete to replace the pyramid that everybody remembers there. And you both gentlemen told us that is an example of how not to do it. Right, Michael?
It's a really opposite process from what we've done. And what we've learned as we've traveled around the country and talked to community after community that's seen how we're doing it, so many of them said, we wish we would have used the process that you're using in Sarasota.
Because essentially what they did was they tore down the pyramid, and the government came out with a plan for the Lens, if you remember, and then the public reaction to it was awful. Mm-hmm. So, lesson learned?
Lesson learned. We have gone to some small listening audiences of 5 up to 100. Some of them have been with young professional groups where we've sponsored beer events, and there's no audience that we haven't refused, but we wanted to make sure that we had clear and resounding support for the foundation of where we were going before we enacted a vision.
Finally, we only have a couple of seconds left, but Michael, when will we have more specifics about what will go in there?
I think we're going to see a lot in the next year. As you heard, you know, I'd love to see us making some serious progress by the end of next year. But what I would suggest for people is research the website that Sarasota Bayfront 2020 has created, the guiding principles, every document that's been reviewed or thought about, even back to the early plans for the Van Wezel from the mid-60s. It's all there. It's a great education.
We'll have to leave it there. But before we go, we want to share with you what some of our viewers are saying about the story that we brought you last night. Sarasota County wants to build a 4-lane bridge over the interstate to connect Cattleman Road to Lakewood Ranch Boulevard. The $20 million project would be built between University Parkway and Fruitville Road. It may still be several years away, but here's what some of you are saying about the plan. Barry Kwartnick writes, "The people of Sarasota are strange. Whine about the traffic, and then when the solution happens, people then whine about the construction. As someone who uses the part of Cattleman Road often enough, I think it is a smart move." Kyle X writes, "You wonder why we complain? You can't go anywhere in the county without taking 30 minutes because of delays for construction." And Richard Geib writes, "This project is sorely needed. Let's get this fast-tracked." Well, if you'd like to join the conversation about tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/news7. And FYI, want to watch past Roundtable discussions? They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. Thanks to our guests for being here tonight. Michael KLAUBER is the volunteer chairman for Bayfront 2020, and John THAXTON is the vice president of community development for the Gulf Coast Community Foundation.